cannot believe that after all the snow we had, with these warm temperatures, it could be gone in days, except maybe for those icebergs out in the parking lots. Early spring is a time for dramatic and sometimes rapid change in the North Country, especially on the rivers. The ice turns into big chunks and can clog the waterway, causing erosion and flooding, but also beauty. We'll witness firsthand an early ice flow on the Au Sable River on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Morja Wealth Management, serving the North Country for 3 generations. MorjaWM.com. Securities offered through Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Hightower is an SEC-registered investment advisor. And Kinney Drugs, now offering specialized home medical equipment and supplies. Learn more at KinneyHomeCare.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, March 11th. First up, about 2,000 corrections officers were fired after not returning to work on Monday when the statewide prison strike ended. It's illegal for state employees to go on strike. Governor Kathy Hochul also issued an executive order barring the COs from being rehired for any state jobs in the future. She discussed that at a press conference today.
There are consequences when people break the law. And that means you're not working in our state workforce ever.
The prison strikes lasted for about 3 weeks and affected nearly every one of the state's 42 correctional facilities. Hochul deployed about 7,000 National Guard troops to help staff the prisons amidst the strikes. Hochul said the impact has been widespread.
It has been all-consuming. It has been wildly expensive for taxpayers, approaching $100 million. It created a very dangerous situation, which I called out from the second day. I said, individuals walked off their jobs and left the incarcerated population alone, left other union members from PEF and CSEA who work in healthcare and in the food support area, left them alone.
The executive order also recommends the fired CO's removal from the Central Registry of Police and Peace Officers for cause. That would prevent the officers from being hired as a police or peace officer in the state. North Country lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are pushing back. In a statement, North Country Assemblyman Scott Gray said Hochul's order is an overreach, while Assemblyman Billy Jones, a Democrat, called it vindictive. State Senator Mark Walczyk, a Republican, said the governor is turning her back on New Yorkers. A new poll from Siena College shows that Governor Hochul's job approval ratings remain below 50%. Jung-Yoon Han from the New York Public News Network reports.
The poll shows that Hochul's approval rating is almost evenly split. 46% approve of the work she's doing, while 48% disapprove. Much of the dissatisfaction New Yorkers feel towards Hochul is over affordability-related issues. She made affordability her top priority for this year, but only 41% of New Yorkers polled believe she's doing a good job in addressing the cost of living. Still, in a hypothetical Democratic gubernatorial primary, Hochul would still win with a lead of 30 points. That's over 2 people who have flirted with the idea of running, Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado and Congressman Richie Torres. In Albany, I'm Jung-Yoon Han for the New York Public News Network.
The St. Lawrence University women's hockey team is going to the NCAA tournament that leads to the Frozen Four. The Saints earned an at-large bid to travel to Ohio. It's the second year in a row the Saints have a spot in the tournament, the 11th time in program history. The Saints will take on Penn State Thursday evening at 7. The winner will play number 2 Ohio State on Saturday. Just up the road in Potsdam, the Clarkson women's hockey team has earned its own spot in the tournament. The Golden Knights face Boston University on Thursday evening at 8 in Minneapolis. If they win, they'll take on the top seed Wisconsin on Saturday. One of the great joys of living in the North Country is getting to watch up close as our natural environment moves through the seasons. Early spring is a particularly exciting and turbulent time. Last week's warm spell and rain led to many rivers across the region starting to break up. That looks like thick cakes of ice floating atop flowing rivers, getting pushed ashore and building up in ice flows and jams. Those can be dangerous and can cause severe flooding and damage. Reporter Amy Feiereisel visited a massive half-mile-long ice jam in the Au Sable River Valley over the weekend. Walter McGarry, who grew up in the area, helped explain what they were seeing from the shore.
We're on the banks of the east branch of the Au Sable River, just off of a little parking lot that's between Upper J and J on 9N. And we're sort of at the end of a big, what would you call it, like a big ice lockup?
Ice flow.
And some of these, like, I don't even know what to call them, these sheets of ice that are broken up are, like 18 inches thick and, 10 feet long by 5 or 7 feet wide, and just like huge pieces of ice.
It would remind someone of the ice castle in Saranac Lake, the Winter Carnival ice castle, except if it was very poorly made and giants were making it, to be able to lift these huge blocks. We had a considerably cold winter, and in the slow-moving sections of the river, you have ice that builds up to, 1.5 or 2 feet thick. And in the spring, when we get a quick melt, some rain, and then some warmer temperatures, that ice breaks up. And this year it happened in a really interesting way. It kind of broke up in sections, and now a lot of those smaller breakups are piling right here.
And so where we're standing, the water is flowing, but sort of further upstream for at least a quarter of a mile, maybe a half of a mile, is an enormous amount of broken up ice. Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and there's a couple of these ice cakes have, been pushed up on shore, which you'll see all along the river. So tell me what's going on here, because it's not like the ice isn't uniform, and I think you can almost see the way that it froze, right?
Well, I'm not an ice expert, but we did get a lot of snow. And you can see here the bottom is pretty solid ice. And those bubbles, as you come to the surface, most likely are basically compacted snow. But the interesting thing is when you have an ice flow like this, it really accelerates the erosion rate along the river. It just scours the banks, assuming they're not, still solidly frozen. And you can see right here, it just runs into all these trees on the side of the river, holding the bank together. Above this flow, if you were to look along the banks, you can just see a whole slew of damaged trees, that the ice just carved up.
I think what's just so striking about it is you really get a sense of how powerful water and ice are, and sort of like how the ice is going to shift and move up and get pushed onto the banks, wherever it gets pushed. And the only things that can really withstand it are very mature trees.
Yeah, I think this is the closest we see to glacial activity. The Adirondacks themselves were carved out by glaciers, and I think this is the closest thing we see today to that type of force working itself on the landscape.
That was Walter McGarry and Amy Feiereisel looking at an ice jam on the east branch of the Au Sable River this past weekend. You can see pictures of the spot they visited at ncpr.org. Warmer temperatures this week and into the weekend could lead to bigger ice jams and flooding. And ice conditions all over the region will be getting less stable as we move into the 40s, 50s, even 60s. So pay attention to local ice advisories. We have more news all the time at ncpr.org. Music today by Caitlin Scholl of Lake Placid and Paul Meyer of Colton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.